Hi, I'm Jeff, and I'm a therapist.
And I'm Tyler, and I'm a patient.
We're going to talk about trauma, healing, and everything. Everything is traumatic.
Tonight, nostalgia, death, and crowdfunding. Welcome to Everything is Traumatic. But I figured out at least name off everything we're going to talk about this evening.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. But Jeff, how are you feeling? How are you
I'm,
feeling?
I, you know, I'm good. We met last week to film some promos, which are awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Um, Tyler has done all the editing and the music and the stuff, and I'm just sort of a hanger on. I
Yeah,
just talk and
no, you're the
then
talent.
I, well, I don't know about that. We're both the talent, but you're also the one that's doing all the work.
Well,
But yeah, we met and then we talked a lot about nostalgia and sort of what what things we look at or what things we think about when we're feeling nostalgic.
yeah, and so I do want to backpedal a little bit. Like you do more than you think. Like you do push more of like posting and finding the pictures to like share and like you have these nice like phrases of like everything is traumatic. Today might be a rough day. Do something creative or do something that makes you happy. Like that takes a lot of legwork that I just I fail to put in.
I think what you're saying is that we complement each other well.
Mm, I think so. Like we both, without really discussing it, we kind of like know the roles that we both excel at.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Because I really don't feel like I'm good at social media. I feel like I don't speak the internet language. I feel,
Yes, I hear you.
but
Well, we are working together to put out the best quality product we can for our fans.
that's right, Jeff.
On America's Top 40 this week.
This week, everything is dramatic. I did actually just edit some videos the other night of it that I need to share with you just to like see what you think of it.
All
Um,
right.
but yeah, we were there and we were talking about nostalgia, and it's what like because the we have two different decades that are comforting to us because you
Yes.
have the 70s and I have the 90s.
Yes. And I found myself. We've talked a little bit about the movies from the 70s, but I find myself very comforted by the tackiness of the 70s, the carefreeness of the 70s, the just gaudiness and silliness of the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
um, the just ridiculousness of the 70s. So I find myself drawn to that right now. And I think that's just because the 80s were okay, but the 80s were like when HIV was like starting to become a big deal. And so, like, you had this free love and this freewheeling kind of crazy attitude in the 70s. And then I think the 80s is when reality started hitting uh, my generation,
Mm-hmm.
that there's consequences for all this stuff we did in the 70s. Although I was like 7 in the 70s, so
And
I
you're like,
wasn't out.
why am I paying for this? I was 7.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't snorting blow at a disco. Um,
And so like I think there's a similar thing with me in that too with like the 90s cuz like and I think it kind of like boils down to like when a kid you don't understand the turmoil that's happening, or am I saying that word right? Turmoil? I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm second guess. Anyways, you don't understand like the stuff happening in the world when you're a kid because you're just kind of like developing in your own, and then when you get older, you realize, oh shit, it is shitty. There's so much terrible things happening.
Yeah, I think, when you're a kid, um, you are playing, you are experiencing everything as newness, and everything is so new and fresh. And
Hmm.
we really haven't had a chance to become cynical yet. We don't really know what the adults are talking about, or why they're always talking, or why they're always stressed. We're just like, we just want to play. We just want to go outside and play, or we want to watch our Saturday morning cartoons, or, we want to just, do that kind of thing. And I think that's sort of where the 70s hits for me, with just all that silliness I mean, it's just watching that stuff is just, it's crazy how different a time that was.
Hmm. And I think the same thing with the '90s too. Like, watch any old 90s movie, I'm just like, man, it is so dated. Like, the acting is so cheesy, and like, yeah, it wasn't as like still, like, like how we mentioned in the '70s, there would be a lot of like longer shots, and it'd be
Mm.
simpler takes, and like things kind of like had like these moments to breathe. And like, yeah, you got that in the '90s too, but like it was also like coming of age of like kind of still faster cuts and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think MTV sort of started that speed up, and now with social media like TikTok and these things like Snapchat, where everything is so quick.
Hmm.
And so go from the 60s and 70s, where you had like static, long, sort of slow, even action movies were sort of slow,
Hmm.
um, to the 90s, where I think things started to speed up. And then now, where everything, our brains are just wired differently, where everything is just, if we go to a web page and it doesn't load within a second, we're upset and we
Oh
go
yeah,
somewhere else.
I am
Yeah.
100% guilty of that. But I want to touch on some of the things that actually like specifically from that time era for you, what sticks out as like comforting.
So Star Wars came out in the 70s, which was, it used to be sort of my thing. I was sort of known as the Star Wars guy around my friends and stuff, because I just obsessed about it. But I remember going to see Star Wars in 77, and I remember feeling alive after it, in the sense of something had been awoken in my brain. It just opened my brain to the power of movies, and the imagination that it just created in me. And it was like a light switch went from sort of dark to light after I saw that movie, and I was just obsessed with it. Um, and so I think that sort of was a very pivotal part of the 70s for me, was seeing that film. And I guess I would have been nine, 7, 8, or 9. I remember
Hmm.
the theater I saw it. I mean, um, so I think that's one of the big things. Also, just the music and the silliness, the Osmonds, all the variety shows, all the just over the top, tacky,
Hmm.
the Brady Bunch variety show. I mean, all that stuff that now when you watched it's so cringy. But at the time, it was just like, that's what we watched. A good variety show. They
Hmm.
had everything.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's so because it almost seems like it does seem like campy almost. I don't know
At,
that maybe
at the
that's the right
time, it
word.
just seemed normal.
Mm.
But yeah, now it's just like insane. And you watch some of the talk shows from the 50s, and they were variety shows, but they weren't like that. They were more, I mean, humor has evolved so much over the years, where you listen to an old Richard Pryor routine, and he's so brilliant, but the kind of comedy he did and the kind of comedy that people do now is so different.
Mm.
Um,
I mean, I would say it's different, but there are like still similarities between the two.
yeah, he was a storyteller. I mean, he told a lot of stories, and he also used his life ups and downs as fodder for his comedy.
Mm.
But going into the 90s, I think we were coming out of the 80s, which was sort of a
very conservative time.
yeah. And then you hit the 90s and you hit grunge. And so you see sort of the reaction of comparing it to the 70s with the disco, the light, the singer songwriters, the really happy, up love music, free love music, to just that Nirvana, just anger and angst, and then everything that came around that. And it really killed the hair band. The 80s was so big on hair bands and hair metal. And I think basically just slaughtered grunge music, slaughtered the hair music. It just stopped. It was just like overnight. We were done with hair metal, and we were into this deep, dark, grungy, sloppy, muddy sounding music.
It was. I think it was bound to happen because I think hair metal fucking sucks personally. I do not enjoy it. I've never enjoyed it. I've never liked it. It does not appeal to me. I'm sure it's a product of its time. And I mean, I'm sure there are some songs that I'll make exceptions for. But
Sure.
yeah, it was a total rejection of that conservative mindset with the 90s. And so that's why I don't know, I'm probably wrong in saying this, but I feel like the 70s and 90s are kind of like a kindred spirit. I think there's some similarities there because your big thing was Star Wars, and then my big thing was Star Wars Episode 1.
Yeah. And when you think about the music was different, but it was just it was a different mood, and it was really getting away from the hair metal and the conservativeness of all the things that were happening in the 80s. It was sort of breaking free of that stuff. So you asked me what kind of memories of the 70s, what kind of memories of the 90s are soothing to you besides the whole thing about Star Wars you mentioned?
Oh yeah, 90s cartoons is very comforting to me. Sometimes I will just like put on any like old Cartoon Network cartoon or any old Nickelodeon cartoon. Even like the old Looney Tunes, because I just watched them so much as a kid, it's also nostalgic. The first thing I wanted to be when I grew up, I didn't want to be an astronaut or a farmer. I did want to be president, but
Okay.
but the first realistic job I wanted to be was a cartoonist. But I can't really draw all that well, so I abandoned it very quickly.
So tell me what are the 90s cartoons?
Oh, you want me to just list some? Probably Ren and Stimpy.
Ren and Stimpy, mentioning that, is a messed up cartoon, but so funny.
Love it. Yeah.
It's dark.
Oh yeah, and the
One of
creator.
my favorite
Oh, go ahead.
One of my favorite gags ever on the Ren and Stimpy is there's a horse that's like a door-to-door nipple salesman, and like the horse has got, I guess, Ren or Stimpy, and he holds him out, and then like Stimpy just says, "Call the police." I mean, it's just so bizarre.
Okay, before we gush on it, like, and I feel like for me, maybe it's subjective, but I usually try to separate the art from the artist. Like John K is a piece of shit person. I don't know if you saw those allegations come out.
I think he had a lot of problems. I mean, did he have mental health problems, and then he was abusive to his staff?
So, I mean, yeah, he did have mental health problems. He was abusive to the staff. He also groomed these two underage girls.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, John K is he's kind of out on the skirts, but Ren and Stimpy is such an important part of my childhood. I will defend the actual show Ren and Stimpy. One of my favorite one of my favorite episodes is the Space Madness episode. And the whole like plot of it is that they would do these one-off episodes kind of where it's like they're space cadets or they're firehouse dogs. And so this was a space cadet episode, and they're guarding this button, It's a button that is supposed to erase history in the universe. Of course, Ren goes crazy. It's kind of like this weird psychodrama of like, he's like, you see this button? Don't touch it. It's the history eraser button. But
I think you can see, and since this is a podcast about trauma and healing, I think you can see the mental health issues sort of in that cartoon.
oh yeah,
The way it was so severe, and I mean, it was funny, but it was also very dark,
it was
and it
funny.
was like edgy.
It was very edgy, and I mean, it does kind of. I could see him, basing Ren off of himself.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, it was like an abusive relationship.
When did SpongeBob come out?
1999. Oh yeah, SpongeBob.
Okay, at the end of the yeah, I feel like it's interesting, the evolution, because in the 70s the cartoons were like Scooby Doo and like the Wacky Races and Rocky and Bullwinkle, which probably started in the 60s. But so you had these very silly, and then either late 70s or early 80s, everybody started having a son. So it would be Scooby and Scrappy Doo, Captain Caveman and Baby Caveman.
Yeah, Baby Caveman.
Yeah. And so they were just ridiculous. So the only ones that really had a whole lot of, and they basically became ads for selling cereal and toys. Right. The only ones that seemed to have any thought to them were the Looney Tunes, the Bugs Bunny cartoons had some depth to them, and they just ran those, I mean, over and over and over again. And then was something like Rocky and Bullwinkle, which again was probably a 60s cartoon that had some real depth to the writing. It became very sugary cereal, very low production value, very just silly, dumb, mindless kind of stuff, I think, in the late 70s and the early 80s. And then it sounds like in the 90s that there started to come some more depth to the cartoons again.
I think what happened was, from what I can kind of gather, and you can kind of trace it back to the creator of Ren and Stimpy, is that for the longest time, and like so like in the 50s and 60s, maybe even the 40s too, with the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies and all those, the cartoonist had more of a say in the product. Like that's why you have famous names like Chuck Jones and Hanna-Barbera. Which Hanna-Barbera was more like churning out product, but that's neither here or there, because I love all of it. But so then around like the 70s and 80s is when it kind of became more manufactured, more like selling cereal, selling a product, you're selling a toy. The writing and shit didn't really matter. But it was around like the late 80s to the early 90s where the cartoonists kind of got more control again, and that's why you got shows like Ren and Stimpy. That's why you got Doug. That's why you got the Rugrats.
Yeah. I mean, I think cartoons, it really is a golden time for adult cartoons in the sense of Family Guy, Simpsons, all those shows and all the stuff on Adult Swim and all the things that are edgy and Rick and Morty and all these things that really, where they become high quality. They're well made, they look great, they have amazing writers, and they really do take on some interesting topics.
Yeah. It's I'm glad it's becoming more of a medium to tell stories in, rather than just a genre. Like, oh, animation, it's a kids movie. No, it's just like any other sort of mode you'd tell a story in, whether that be a mode of comedy, a mode of like it's very stylized, like a comic book, or anything like that. So it very much seems like the media is what was nostalgic to us in our periods.
Yeah, the media like and the for me, yeah, definitely.
And I think it's like that for a lot of people.
I think and it's so amazing how a song takes you back. This is a weird kind of segue, but I mean, so sometimes when I have on music from the 70s or the 80s and I rest, I close my eyes, I have this thought of, right now in my brain, I'm in the 70s or 80s. And it's like for a second you feel like you're there because you're sort of, the sounds outside the window are the same, the noises at night are the same, and it's just like time is so bizarre in the way it works. It's just like your brain can take you back to a time, and it's almost like your body feels there. And then it's like I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be 12 again, and it's like, of course, you don't. But that's sort of that fantasy sometimes I have when I'm listening to media from an earlier time,
Yeah.
especially when you're sort of sleepy.
Yeah. No, I totally get that feeling too. And it is kind of like, I don't know, for me, it does kind of put it in a different perspective of like, it's really made up of moments rather than it's like time. I don't know. That probably sounds really dumb.
No, no, I feel like you're exactly right. And time moves so fast that so it feels like sometimes I'll remember something when I was 12 or 13, and then it's like I'm 54 now, and it's like that 51 years or that 41 years, it's just like a snap. It's just a second. It's so amazing that time is such a strange kind of just process of because in our brains we can go anywhere in that time field, but then we're there. um, and you can go forward in time, but you can't physically go backwards in time.
Right. And yeah, cuz oh fuck, I had something. Oh, you had a really good thought. I guess this is kind of segueing into how time, works. And like, I think why, for one, a lot of people are nostalgic, and two, why like media itself is becoming nostalgic is like being afraid of like death in a way.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to hold on to a simpler time. Like you said, you are closer to death than you were when you were 12.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And speaking of death and the 90s, I mean Kurt Cobain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, do you remember where you were when you heard that Kurt Cobain was dead?
I was 2 years old.
You were 2 years old.
Mm-hmm. Because he killed himself in 94, right?
You were two,
Yeah.
and okay, I definitely remember. Jesus. So I definitely remember that. I was at work. It was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a huge Nirvana fan, but he wasn't like my hero or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I love the music, and it was just so shocking. It's just like so it's different. So like when Kurt Cobain died, it hit me just because he was an icon. When
Mm-hmm.
John Lennon died in 1980, I was 12, and so I knew that it had happened. But then when I figured out who he was, and I really got into the Beatles and John Lennon in college,
Mm-hmm.
it was like I went back and I grieved for that then. So
Yeah.
it's weird how, like, I mean, at the time I saw all the stuff happen, but it didn't really hit me. It was just like, oh, he died. And so like he was a Beatle. But then when you actually figure out what kind of music he put out and he became a hero,
Mm-hmm.
then it was like, oh wow, I'm grieving this later. Um, but a lot of people idolize Kurt Cobain of what he sort of just who he was and sort of what he stood for and
Mm-hmm.
the music.
Yeah. And I mean, I think most role models are flawed, but I think he's one who had like a moral conviction at least. Like he took a stance on things,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was very much like
He
an
was sort of a
alpha.
pure musician. I mean, I'm sure they were happy to make money and become famous, but I think he was a music guy. So it was like, I want to make this kind of music. And so if we get super popular, that's great. But I'm still going to make music
Mhm.
like I make. I'm not going to change the kind of music I make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where like the big problem with like creating art and stuff is like, um, okay, I want to make this point and then I want to backtrack to the to the thing about nostalgia, but I fuck, get your thoughts together, Tyler. You're cutting off Jeff. You ruin everyone's time. Um, that's where the question comes in of like, is art for the sake of creating, or is it a product, a commodity? Is it content, or is it art?
Mm.
You know, like on the one hand, like yes, it's great to just make your own art, but after a while, if you want to continue to make your own art uninterrupted, you have to, you know, make it substantial for you.
Yeah, I mean, I look at anything creative as art. But I mean, even those bad cartoons that I was talking about earlier, the ones that are just were dumb,
Mhm.
that's art. I mean, it's creative output. It entertained people for years. Um, so yeah, I feel like, um, it's sort of like we've talked before about how like Hollywood is all about money
Mhm.
and power,
Mhm.
but every now and then some really amazing art gets made. And so it's all art. It's different kinds of art, different people's opinion. Some people love
Yeah.
the Medea movies,
Mhm.
some people love the Pauly Shore movies or the Fast and the Furious
Mhm.
movies. It's all creative processes. Um, but sometimes real, like, so it's like, you get that kind of art and then you get like Da Vinci
Mhm.
or you get the Mona Lisa. And so there are things coming out of Hollywood, even with these cartoons, that sometimes are just have brilliance.
But he
Um,
and like I do agree with you, but I also like to offer the other perspective of like, yes, they are art, but does it discredit? I guess the question is like, does it discredit them if this art is created to be a product or advertise a product? Does that discredit the art? Because a lot of people
I don't think
see, a
so,
lot of people would
but
say that it does just because it doesn't, I guess, have like the integrity, which I can kind of see. I can see both sides of it. I think they're both, personally.
I've seen some really horrible movies, and then we run the credits, and there's like 800 people that made this movie,
Hmm.
and I know when they were making this movie, they thought they were making something
Great.
that was good. It just turned out to be bad. So, I mean, to me, the whole idea is art is taking something that is nothing and making it into something. So, going from an idea to a finished product, whether it be a song or a poem or a cartoon or a movie or whatever,
Hmm.
it might be really terrible, but it's creation of something from nothing. And they 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 at one time in it was going to be the best thing ever,
Hmm.
and it just wasn't,
And sometimes it
but
just doesn't pan out,
yeah.
which is
So
fine.
I think even really terrible art is art.
Hmm.
It's better than nothing.
And I 100% agree
At
with.
least somebody tried to do
Yeah,
something.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you're good.
I was just gonna say that yeah, I agree with you. Like 100%, bad art is still art, even if it is even if it is designed to sell or make a profit. Art is art. But I wanted to back up because I had a thought about nostalgia while we're clinging on to it, how it plays into death, and why I think we should just stop the reboots. Is we don't need to keep rebooting the art because the art is going to stay around. Like I still watched old Looney Tunes cartoons, I still watched all
Yeah.
that stuff. Like we keep the art alive. We don't have to like keep rebooting it. We don't have to keep rehashing it. We need new stories. We need new characters. We need new things.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reboot is in general laziness. unless it's very hard to replicate an original.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then they do a good job. Sometimes they'll take a totally different take on it or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's Hollywood's laziness because they are like, oh, that was a hit 20 years ago, so let's make it
Let's make it
again.
again.
Let's do it again. And sometimes it's almost exactly the same.
And that's where that's where the product comes in of it. That's where it gets kind of sad.
And I think that is the nostalgia thing. I remember this was good, so I'll go see this. You know, like the Mario movie. I think it's an incredibly nostalgic movie. It's not my nostalgia as much as others, but it is about nostalgia.
Did you like it?
It's okay.
I haven't watched it, and I asked my nephew what he thought of it, and he said the same thing. He said it's okay. I said, did you enjoy yourself at least? He said, yeah, but it's not as good as Up. And so apparently Up is like the ceiling.
Up is I haven't seen Up, but Up
You
is,
haven't?
I think, probably, no, yeah.
Is it too rough?
There's a lot of stuff. No, I think I can handle it. It's just, I got in a thing where everybody was saying how great Pixar movies were, and I just didn't dig the Toy Story movies, and so I sort of got left behind a little bit. I don't think I've ever seen all the Toy Story movies.
I loved the first Toy Story and the second one. Yeah. I didn't like the third
but
one.
I love some of the Pixar stuff. I've loved so much of the Pixar stuff. I thought WALL-E was brilliant.
Yeah.
I've loved so many of the Pixar movies. Something about the Toy Story movies just didn't do it for me. And it's about, of course, what we're talking about. It's about nostalgia.
Nostalgia. Playing with a toy.
Yeah.
And because we covered nostalgia, we covered death, we haven't talked a lot about crowdfunding.
I think that's a good point. We have been talking about movies.
We've been talking about movies, but we've been talking about a system in place where people get funding versus someone wanting to be kind of outside of that system and relying on their audience to help fund their movies.
It used to be if you wanted to make a movie and you weren't in the Hollywood system, you would max out your credit card and borrow money from your friends, like in not a crowdfunding way, but just like your family and direct friends. Now everybody wants to crowdfund everything.
Yeah. I want to crowdfund that cardigan.
We need to do that.
Maybe we should do that as our response to Bing.
Buy Tyler a cardigan. How much is the cardigan?
The cardigan is like it's like $80.
Oh man, $2. $2, make Tyler happy.
And if you put in $5, you get a nice Polaroid of me in the cardigan.
There you go.
And if you donate 10, you can see me.
We should do that as sort of a experimental kind of performance art thing. We just have to figure out how to do it right. But just like a piece of advertisement, or just say an art piece, almost like what we should do is set up somewhere, like down in the Market Square area, with a hat and a thing that says "Buy Tyler a sweater," and see if we can and film some of it, like for a little documentary kind of thing, and see if we can get enough money to buy you the sweater. Or we could crowdfund it on Facebook or one of the whatever.
We'll tag the link in Bing's post though, so.
Yeah, we'll definitely connect it to that. So here's the deal. You know what I like crowdfunding for? Music. I like it when a band says, "Hey, we want to put out an album." We don't want to work within the system of recording studios and recording contracts. So if we get this thing, we'll make the album. If we don't, we won't make the album. So you pay basically what the album's going to be, and then you get the album if they make the thing. To me, that's a brilliant way for the artist to provide a product to their fans, especially for small bands or independent bands. You're getting a product from a band that you like. I don't love the whole like give me money, um, and you can have a role in the film, or give me money and you can have a T-shirt or whatever. That's fine, but it's just like I don't know. And I think in Knoxville, a lot of people want to make movies, and maybe they should make a movie or two first, and then they might could crowdfund something. But don't crowdfund everything.
Yeah. So do you think maybe like, because like it sounds to me like, and maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, I'm not sure, but for supporting a crowdfunding for say an independent band would be better just because you get an actual physical copy of like the album they're working on that's funding it.
Basically, you're just pre-ordering the album. You're saying, I'll pay $30 for the album. Here's my $30 now, and you're going to put the album out. So you're getting basically what you would get by going to buy an album. With a movie, you're not really. I mean, maybe the movie gets made, and they'll put you in the credits. And some big movies have been crowdfunded, but I feel like people think they need the money, and they probably haven't really done the planning. I mean, they haven't done the whole process of getting ready to make the movie. It's different if you say, hey, I guess on the movie thing it'd be like you get a copy of this movie, you get a DVD of this movie, which might be similar to the band thing.
See, that's what I was.
But it's just like
that's what I was thinking. Like maybe it would be more of a encouragement as opposed to just like a T-shirt and a shout out.
Yeah.
Like, and it needs to be a little more like, and like I don't know a whole lot of what crowdfunders or crowdfundees are out in town, so I don't think I think we need to talk to someone who's done it or seen it or contributed more to it. But I feel like just like more personable things, because I know when I support a local band or like an independent artist, it's always nice to get like just these free little extra things like a sucker. Like I'm not going to eat the sucker, but like it's cute that you thought of it. You threw in a note that said thank you.
What I see a lot of on Facebook is, hey, I'm making a movie, give me some money. And it's just like, okay, but why would I give you money? You know, what is the proof of concept? Where are you? Have you made any movies?
Yeah, that's the thing is like you need some resume of your work.
I don't feel comfortable, like I'm not really comfortable asking for money for a product that I'm making, because that puts pressure on me. And then it becomes like, if I don't do it, then I'm in trouble, or I've disappointed people, or I've ripped people off. So I just want to do stuff, you know, and I don't have a problem with the concept. You know, I personally don't want to say I'm going to make Dick Chicken Part 5, and so crowdfund me. You know,
and you see, Jeff, this is kind of all wrapping up into a nice little bow earlier about how we work well together.
Yeah.
Because I will ask that, hey, if you're listening, why don't you go ahead and donate some of your money to Everything is Traumatic? Or to get me that cardigan. I mean, screw the podcast for a second here. I want the cardigan.
I feel like we're putting a lot of work into this, and we are trying to make something useful that's interesting to us and others. I wouldn't have a problem if people wanted to, like if we did a Patreon or whatever. I don't have a problem when you have actually created product and you're working hard on it. And so I'm not saying anybody's not. I just saying before you just start asking for money, not you, but before somebody does, you need to have something thought out. You need to have something. This is my concept. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I need the money for, you know, but also don't ask me for money if you're not putting your own money into it. You know, you need to be invested also. It can't just be, oh, I'm going to get the money and make it. You got to be invested too. It needs to be not just your idea that you want money for.
You need to.
You have to do something a little bit more. And so we need to figure out how to get the cardigan for you. I feel like that should be something we play around with, and maybe we can discuss it a little bit more. But you know, how do we make that into sort of an event
How do we?
an interesting kind of performance art
Mm-hmm.
piece, but we need to get you the
We
sweater.
need the sweater.
But how do we make both of the? How do we entertain, but also get you the sweater?
We are trying to figure out how making movies work, because that's basically what it is, isn't it? We're trying to entertain, but
Yeah,
also get me a cardigan.
I mean, we could even start a new kind of thing, and we've done. I mean, you've been advertising night poops. We've been pushing everything as traumatic. But I mean, maybe just buy Tyler a sweater, and just get a Venmo
I have a Cash App.
code, and then yeah, and just say, if you want to help Tyler buy a sweater, send $1 to his Venmo. And we wouldn't accept more than $1. It'd be neat to see if we could get 80
If we can
people
get 80
to give
people
you
to give me
$1 to buy
one,
the
yeah,
sweater.
to buy the cardigan.
I mean, because you're not asking, $1 is not that. I mean, I think everybody could give $1
Surely.
for the kids.
For me. For the kid.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, it'd be an interesting experiment for us to try, and it could be
I think
entertaining.
it'd be good.
Because you could come on and do little posts about how much money has come in, and then when you get it, you could wear the sweater.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know if I wanted to offer tiers or not. Like if they wanted to donate, say $5, they get a nice picture of me in it.
That's a way to look. They can smell the sweater after you've worn it if they give 10.
Oh yeah. I mean, we'll have to meet at a public place, but yeah, we can make that happen. I'll wear it on the way over.
Yeah. People pay for that stuff.
Jeff, I think we've reached the logical conclusion here.
I agree.
Any final thoughts?
I'm just really enjoying talking to you. I feel like it's therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is traumatic, but us talking is therapeutic, and so maybe this can be therapeutic to our listeners in the future.
I hope so, and I also hope that it soothes their souls, and
Yes.
it makes them want to, I don't know, send $1 to my Cash App handle. That's a regular human host. $1 will go straight to the cardigan fund. So,
I'm gonna once we get done, once we post this, I'm gonna send $1 to the thing. I will be the first. I will be the first donation.
Oh, I love it. All right. This has been Everything is Traumatic. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Jeff.
And as always, which catchphrase are we doing, Jeff? I guess I'll do the family one, right? I don't know. What's a good catchphrase? Get the fuck out of the way, Tammy. Oh, and take care of yourself. Play us out.